The following podcast contains spoilers and language that our mothers would prefer we did not use. Like,
mate, did we watch a thing this week?
Yeah, we did.
Hello, everybody out there. Welcome back to We Watched a Thing. It's Billy and Topher. How you been, mate?
I'm travelling fine, thank you. How about yourself?
Mate, I'm not bad. I'm doing okay.
Great.
Good content. Edit that out. Mate, we've got some new viewing this week. Brand new release.
True story.
I think we mentioned it last week. We haven't had a good run lately. Like, thankfully, we got a nice reprieve with The Groove last week, but
it wasn't part of last week's episode, but kind of as soon as we'd finished recording, you were like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
We didn't have to watch the kind of thing, because you then went through our past kind of 4 or 5 episodes before The Groove, and it was a cold streak.
Yes. So I was excited to get to this, which is currently at a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Doesn't mean anything.
No, but it's been very, very well received, this movie. The majority of people are big fans.
People jumping on the LMM train maybe claim that you're into In the Heights before anyone even knew what Hamilton was.
Yeah. Now, look, maybe there's some of that going on. Let's find out. As you alluded to, yes, the film is In the Heights, a 2021 American musical drama film based on the stage musical of the same name by Quiara, Alegría, Hudes, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Directed by Jon M from a screenplay by Hudes, it stars Anthony Ramos, Corey Hawkins, Leslie Grace, Melissa Barrera, Olga Merediz, and Jimmy Smits. And what is it about, Toph?
It's about the version of the American dream that exists in Washington Heights, I guess.
Yeah.
About the only thing I knew about this going in was that the Heights did refer to Washington Heights, an area that I think I first became aware of at the end of Frances Ha. I think she mentions that she's thinking about getting a place in Washington Heights. So I think that's as far back as me and Washington Heights go. You got much of a relationship to Washington Heights, Billy?
I've been to Washington Heights. I kind of just strolled through it. not really much of a story to tell about it, but that's fine because this movie doesn't have much of a story to tell about it either.
I did say to you yesterday, in a mild spoiler, because you hadn't watched the film yet, that professional dancers have better bodies than us. Professional dancers are yet to embrace the dad bod. I think they're missing out. I don't know how others feel about it, but some good rigs in this film.
Maybe we need to write Dad the Musical. Just
finally, white dads can be seen.
Just dads arguing over who has the better grill.
Looking at people's drills in the garage, going,
Yeah.
Right, you went with the brushless.
Yeah. Just a whole number about a dad picking out a lawnmower.
Yes, good stuff there. I feel actually. Talking about war movies.
Love it. We should get on that. I think we're onto a winner there.
All right, coming soon.
So this film, long time in the making. The stage musical came out, I believe, in 2006, and Universal first picked this up in 2008. And it was going to film in 2011, but then it was cancelled. So, long time coming.
Cancelled in like the literal sense, not the cancel in the Heights.
Yes. It actually, to be honest, it surprises me that this film was picked up back then, kind of before the height of Hamilton.
Yeah, this was already wanted as a screen adaptation pre-Hamilton.
Yeah, because my understanding is that this was the kind of thing that, real musical theatre nerds knew about. Like, I'm assuming your sister was a fan of In the Heights possibly before Hamilton, but for the majority of people, nobody really knew what this was. I was very surprised to learn that this was picked up back then.
I wonder, I'm curious to know who was kind of attached back then, actually. That information may be out there on them internets and I just didn't dig hard enough to find it, or at all.
Here's what I can read is that Kenny Ortega was set to direct the film, and the reason it was cancelled was due to Universal looking for a bankable Latino like Shakira or Jennifer Lopez instead of unknown actors.
Did you just say Jennifer Lopez?
Yeah, it's more fun to say that way.
Okie dokie.
And I believe that Lin-Manuel possibly had something to say about them, looking for someone big, or I'm not exactly sure, but...
Was really interested to see that the director of this film also directed a G.I. Joe film.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
I was like, oh, wow. Like, it's just on the face of it, it seems like a really weird mix to be doing musicals and action. But then after about 3 seconds thought, it actually makes a ton of sense. Like, action and musicals, putting them both on screen, both involve a lot going on visually, a lot of noise, a lot of things that need to be choreographed.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
With the exception, you're just exchanging punches for high notes, and I think actually it makes a ton of sense.
That's absolutely true. I mean, you think about Spielberg doing West Side Story, makes complete sense. You're right. What you really want is to somehow capture the energy of a live performance without any live performance. It actually must be very difficult to choreograph these things, because not only are you choreographing the performance, the dancers, you then have to think about the choreography of the camera. And it is funny that there are times in this film where there's a lot of dancing going on, but there's also a lot of close-ups, so you're missing a lot of it. So it must be hard to kind of strike that balance between the choreography of the dancing and the camera.
That's right, because if you just set the camera back and be like, all right, I'm just going to have the camera here and you can just watch everyone dance, then it's like, well, then why is this a movie?
That's correct.
You just film people dancing on a stage and save yourself the bother of making a movie, which famously really hard to do. I think there's a really good balance in the direction and editing of showing the staging of these pieces but still servicing the characters in there. I actually give the direction pretty high props for that. Like, you think about the first big number in the Heights, which really is directed, like, that is an action sequence.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, there's a lot of... I haven't actually seen whichever G.I. Joe film it is. But, I can, totally see this director doing action stuff, because that first sequence with the cutting, this film, for me, out of the gate, this film comes with a really good energy in that opening number.
Yeah, look, I agree. I have kind of a lot to say about this movie, and it was not what I expected, and I'm a little bit worried that I'm going to get some hate mail later on from musical and Lin-Manuel fans. But for the most part, I agree. I think that the direction was really good. I do think that there are some numbers that suffer from some over-editing, which is a typical action movie problem as well. I think there are some numbers where there are too many cuts. And there's one number in particular where, and again, this is that difficult relationship between the choreography and the camera, where a couple is spinning as part of the dance. And there's a couple of times during that sequence where I felt like the camera crossed the line. It is kind of hard, I guess, to position that camera without crossing the line while the characters are physically moving that much. But it did throw me a little when it happened. But I think overall the look of the film is quite nice. And I agree with you that I think they've done a very good job of capturing the energy of the performances while still having it look like an actual film. On the look of the film, I do have one question for you, which I found interesting the first couple of times it happened, and then by the end I was like, yeah, okay, I can actually get on board with this style. How did you feel about the very small animated segments during dance numbers? Such as there's a point where she's kind of looking at a fence and she starts drawing like a subway map and that pops up. Or during the lottery number, when there's, they're swinging these animated golf clubs and pulling out these animated objects, it's kind of a bit strange at first, but I actually quite liked it.
Yeah, I dug it. I thought that the style of the graphics treatment itself worked well with the rest of the look of the film. I actually wonder even if you're going to go a bit bigger with it and have it be less sporadic.
I agree. That's my one thought about it, because that's the only reason it kind of threw me, is because it happens so rarely that it's not like a consistent style. I would have rather had much more of it, I think.
Yeah, I'm not talking going full bed knobs and broomsticks, but just really embrace it.
Yeah.
Side note, can you hear the word sporadic without thinking about Clueless? There's this really sort of sun-drenched, high-colour look to the film going on. I was not surprised when I did a little bit of reading afterwards and saw that Do the Right Thing was an inspiration for the look of the film, which, of course, was set on the hottest day of summer.
Yeah.
And those bright popping colours was part of visualising that feeling. In some ways, I think it's quite uncool to go big, bright colours these days in films. I think if you're trying to be trendy, I think you go more
Gritty.
muted, grounded, gritty, exactly. Because big, bright colours, it feels a bit more 90s video clip,
Yeah.
if you like. Personally, I back the choice for this story, for these characters.
I agree, yeah.
I think the look of the film with this kind of, it tends to be like in outside shots, there's this big use of the sun as a backlight.
Yes.
But the image is still balanced really nicely and you're still getting this kind of sun-drenched look despite working against the inherent contrast, if you like, of having such a strong backlight.
I agree. I think, yeah, colour, it's a very warm film. There's a lot of orange tones, lots of, yeah, as you say, sun lighting. And I think for what this is, it does work perfectly. There's nothing gritty about this story at all. It's a very soft story, and I think you're right. It's a very smart choice for the look of the film to match that.
It's got to be a hell of a labor-intensive way of shooting. You just think about the amount of cuts in this film. Like you said, there's at least one number where for you it cuts too much. There's a lot of sequences where I think like insert shots and things are used really well.
Yep.
And like you compare that to Alfonso Cuarón knocking out like 2 minutes of a film in a single shot.
Yes.
And it's like, sweet, I just banked 2 minutes of a movie in one shot, which like I am absolutely not having a go at Alfonso Cuarón. He's an absolute master of long takes. But, you know, you just think of the difference of, sweet, I just banked 2 minutes of film to, all right, now I need a shot of this because I need it for the next 6 frames of this script.
Yes.
I just think it must have been, I don't know how many units were going on the film, but the amount of actual individual shots required for this movie.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think that on the long take thing, look at La La Land, for example. I think there are absolutely ways where you can have this kind of energy in a long take without needing that many cuts. I absolutely think it can work. And it would have been interesting to maybe see a little more of that done in this film. That being said, as I said, for the most part, I think the look of the film is pretty good and it does do a good job of capturing everything it needs to.
Yeah, I'd probably like you. I wouldn't mind it if there were longer shots that if you can move the camera around to still show the abilities of these people.
Yes.
As they're doing numbers, without just locking off the camera and being like, well, why is this a movie?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, geez, I don't need that job, and I couldn't do that job. That would be really very hard. But on the flip side, there are times where the insert shots and things are used to really great effect in the movie, I think. Like going back to the first number where things like doors closing and this kind of thing are used as part of the rhythm of a number.
Yes.
Which I think those choices were really actually pretty great in the moment. So I think for me, on the whole, I do really like the directing and editing. If the audience was 100% Topher's, I probably would like more longer shots, but that's I'm nitpicking.
Yeah. No, I agree. And on those insert shots, one thing I do particularly like is that this must be a completely different experience as a film than it is on stage. You know, you were talking earlier about using like the closing of a door almost as part of the rhythm. You think of that opening number where someone is hosing down the street and the kind of brush of the water on the concrete is used in the beat. And there's a lot of moments like that where it must be quite heavily altered. Even the framing device, which I must say I personally am not a fan of. I'm not talking about him talking to the children. The whole framing device of the countdown to the blackout, I don't personally get the reason for that. The blackout is not really a huge deal. It's not the climax of the film. I don't know why we're counting down to it. It feels strange to me.
I'm probably actually going to go the complete other way. I don't mind that framing device at all. And what gives me the irrits is whenever we go back to the kids, I felt like it sucked the energy and the momentum out of the story.
Well, and you famously hate children as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't mind these ones. It was the scenes themselves. I thought the kids weren't really pestering me for once. Now, having mentioned the momentum of the story, I feel this way about maybe every musical I have ever seen, which not a ton. Not going to pretend to be an expert here in musicals, but for me, even ones that I really like, I don't think I've ever seen one where, for me, the momentum of the story carries through uninterrupted. Even in LMM's next work, The Beloved Hamilton, there's a point in Hamilton where I'm like, yeah, I think we could do with something happening. And for me, with this film, I think we get, this is a guess, I'm going to say we get about 70 minutes into this film where I was having a really good time, and then it hits a wall.
This film hits a very big wall. And here is where I think I'm going to lose a lot of musical or Lin-Manuel fans. I think that the filmmaking here is far, far, far stronger than the content. I think this film is way too long. It suffers from what a lot of musicals do, which is where the songs don't know when to end. And there are some, like the Lottery song was my favorite song for the first 2 minutes. Now, by minute 6, I'm completely over it and I don't need it.
Yep. I like the Lottery thing. I like the fact that it's $96,000 because, one, I'm sure that was because $96,000 they found could work well as a lyric. But also, I just like the amount of money. Like, it's life-changing for people, but still like a realistic sum of money that...
Yes.
Like, I don't know anyone who's won $100,000 in the lottery, but you wouldn't be shocked if, like, a friend of yours had a cousin who did.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I think reasonably well played with the lottery, you know, kind of Chekhov's lottery ticket. It does pay off. And I may be alone here, but by the time it did pay off, I'd kind of forgotten about it, which I think was good.
Yeah, because here's my other problem. There's very little subtlety in this. Like, there's no subtext to anything. Everything is... I think there's a little too much Chekhov's lottery ticket going on. Like, there's no guessing at any point what is going to happen about anything, anywhere. Like, you don't even... There's not even any subtlety around, you know, what the character's motivations or wants is. They tell you every 3 seconds what it is they want. And I also feel like it's a very... I kind of said it before. I think this movie is just too soft. It's very sanitized. When you get your first swear word, which is shit, about 10 minutes before the movie ends, and it's a joke, I just kind of... I don't know. If this movie were an hour shorter, it could be on the Disney Channel. This is effectively like a High School Musical level musical for me. And it's just not what I was expecting, I guess. Am I alone there? Did you feel similarly, or?
Look, I think you're right in saying that it's in many ways a soft. Like when they are addressing the racism that the characters in the story come up against, it's because they're telling you about it. They don't really. It's very tell, not show.
Yes,
if you like. And look, if that's what you're doing, that's okay. If the point is to make it hard hitting, it's not going to work as well. But you know what? That may not be the point.
No, that's right. And I think that's clear. I think effectively this movie it's supposed to be joyful. It's not supposed to be hard-hitting. It's meant to be very light and very entertaining. Which I think is my problem with it, is that I didn't find it entertaining enough for that. Like, I'm sitting there for over 2 hours and you know, at certain points I'm getting very, very, very bored. And maybe that's just me, but that was my largest problem with the film.
One of the few things I'd heard about the movie before I'd seen it was one critic I'd heard say that, who had seen the musical on stage, and they felt that it worked better as a film than a stage musical. Maybe you and this critic are kind of on the same page there, in that you like the filmmaking and the execution more than you do the actual thing that they're executing.
For me, that's absolutely what's happening. I mean, shall we talk about the songs, given this is a musical?
Sure.
So, I mean, yeah, tell me your thoughts here.
LMM's thing
Yep.
doesn't work as well on me as it does a lot of people. That's not to say I don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make me rapturous in the same way that it does clearly many people. This production is probably more or less 50-50 for me in terms of numbers that I enjoyed and ones that I was like, this could either stand to be shorter or, you know what, this song's just not for me.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
As you know, I absolutely love Hamilton, and I know literally every single word to it, and I adore just about every song. I think as you said, there are some moments. I think it gets a little weaker in Act 2, but I think it's musically very, very strong. My problem with Lin-Manuel is I've reached a point where I kind of wonder how much he's really got to give. And I think with this show, a lot of it gets quite repetitive. I feel that he's a much stronger songwriter for women than he is for men, purely because every male character ends up sounding the same because that's his style of writing. It's not just that they're rapping. They all have the same cadence and beat to them. You know, like you can almost close your eyes during a song and pick when the beat is going to drop because it becomes very formulaic. Whereas at least the women's song, I guess, because he's not writing for a male voice, I feel like he steps outside of that box a little bit and maybe does some more interesting things. Because, yeah, by halfway through this film, I just feel like I'm hearing the exact same beat over and over again. I don't know if you felt that way as well, but for me, that's my largest problem.
I mean, certainly, like, from the very opening number of this film, it's like if you hadn't been told, if you didn't know that this was the same guy, and let's say like me and probably many people, you're familiar with Hamilton, you're not familiar with In the Heights, and you don't know that In the Heights comes first, like whatever. And you hear the first song in this production, you're like, oh, I know who this is.
Yes.
Now, for me, that's not like how many of our favorite bands could you put on a song that you hadn't heard before and been like, oh, this is clearly X band. So if you're looking for something that you haven't got before from him, if you're already a fan but just don't know this property, are you going to get that? I'm going to say probably not. Is that going to bother a lot of people? Quite possibly not.
Yeah, I agree. I think for most people, they're not going to be bothered by it.
Is it a kind of genetic hangover of stiff upper-lipped Britishness that makes us unable to move our bodies, Billy? Is that what's going on?
I mean, I can certainly jiggle. Does that count as body movement?
I don't know. I don't know how someone would make a musical based around a bunch of white people in the suburbs where we live and not have. It's like, and what's the choreography going to be? I'm going to get up from the couch. The nut bush. You know, even people in New Zealand don't know about us doing the nut bush.
Yeah, I know. I saw this the other day that's purely an Australian thing.
I had no idea that that was that the rest of the world don't partake in the nut bush kind of. I mean, it's a line dance, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
On drinking sparkling wine straight from the bottle.
Yeah.
You ever done it?
I'm not a wine drinker, so no. But I'm not a bottle drinker either. Even with a beer, I will pour it into a glass. I don't
decant.
I don't like drinking out of bottles or cans.
While watching this, I was thinking about the one time in my life where I got to the point where I was drinking sparkling wine straight from a bottle. It was a friend's 21st. Everything else was gone. So we started just necking magnums of sparkling wine. It will shock you to hear that I woke up the next morning face down in a field with an injured shoulder.
I mean, that tracks. You used to do that a lot. Remember that time you fell in a hole?
I do remember it. Not well, because I was far from sober, but the injury remains to this day.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Were you naked?
Look, I can neither confirm nor deny reports of my state of undress.
Hey, can I bring up one thing as well? And it might just be because recently we've had a few more musical films. And, there's not that many musical films these days. I think it's picking up again. But it tends to be kind of a specialty thing. And lately the ones we've had have been at least partly live recordings. Like you look at Les Mis, for example. I found some sync issues with the dubbing in this for me. Like, I feel like there are plenty of times where their mouths don't match, or at least don't match the intensity that they're singing with, and it just kind of threw me.
I think that your second point is the bigger one for me.
Yeah, it's not so much that the sync is out, it's just that it looks very flat compared to the intensity they're singing
someone
with.
in their performance on camera is doing it reasonably, like somewhat low key.
Yes.
Whereas in the studio, they were going for it a lot more. There were times where, that certainly didn't totally marry up on screen, did it?
No, and it was just another one of those things that really took me out because I don't know, and I don't really get the decision for why either. Because to me, if anything, they should be acting with more intensity. But it was just very flat in the visual performance, whereas the audio was, it just really didn't match.
I do recall an interview with Hugh Jackman around the time of Les Mis about why they were doing it live, which is in terms of the audio recording itself.
Oh,
it's not the way you would do it. But of course, the plus side and the reason they wanted to do it is that, well, you're going to get. That the choice that you make on the day is the choice that will live on.
Yeah, for me, it didn't marry. We haven't really spoken about the performances yet, which is probably kind of unfair. I think most of the acting is fairly good. Anthony Ramos is good in this film. I think most of the performances are good. Nothing really blows me away, but I think there's some solid performances here.
The central characters I found really engaging, actually. The first time LMM pops up, I was like, okay, that's fine. He's there. That's fine. It's not drawing that much attention to itself. And then the second time happens and it's like, okay, we've really just stopped the movie to have a minute of Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's like he's just there to have the post-credit scene of the LMM cinematic universe.
I know. It felt very Stan Lee, didn't it?
Yes, and I cared about as much.
Yep.
I watched all the way through the credits because my sister had told me that I needed to.
Oh, really? I didn't. Is there a post-credit scene?
Yeah, there's a post-credit scene.
Of Lin?
Of Lin and Chris Jackson just hanging out for 20 seconds, like at the ice truck.
Right.
And
okay.
There may be in the Heights and Hamilton enthusiasts who find it quite gleeful. I was like, really? I sat through the credits for that? I was like, if Aaron Burr turns up and shoots someone, that'll be funny.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I don't understand why this is here.
Okay, so how are you scoring this? I think it sounds like you're a little bit more positive than me, at least.
Like I said, probably 70 minutes into this film, really enjoying myself.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good production. Like you, I think it is significantly too long. And for me, it definitely loses momentum. I wind up being a kind of soft positive, probably 6 out of 10 on it.
This is an odd one. I feel simultaneously harsh and generous at the same time, giving this a flat 5. To me, it's just kind of average. I think the filmmaking is quite strong and picks it up. Nothing wrong with the performances. For me, just the content is very, very flat. It's just kind of a little bit dull for me. And
the green screen work of during the $96,000 is just very tough stuff.
I was actually, I kind of felt like I'd been a bit negative already, so I didn't read all of my notes, but I do think there's some very janky CG going on. The number towards the end where they're dancing on the side of the building is very, very rough. Just very rough.
Was not a fan.
And not the first time I noticed it in that exact same set. But when they started dancing on the side of the building, I just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah, not great. All right, well that's it. It's a little bit sad. I feel bad because I know that a lot of people are loving this movie, and I was really hoping that we might be some of them. And
I really was for the first, third.
Yep. Okay. All right. What are we getting to next week, my friend?
I don't know. Is it Start Your Engines time?
It sure is. That's right. Fast and Furious 9. I'm so excited. Probably
F9. Check your keyboards, fools.
Probably my most anticipated film of the year.
That's incredibly sad if true.
Are we hopefully going to get to this together?
Look, I hope so. We'll see what happens.
I really hope so. I hope so. All right. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle @wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing, and we'll catch you next week.
Watch a movie, folks.